We are live for the Week 6 edition of the Phil Steele Show. If you're joining in on YouTube, we appreciate you. Jump in the chat. Tell us what you like. Give us a pick or two. We love that. I'm Tripp Hurd. I've got David Kahn, the Admiral, alongside our main man, Phil Steele here. Phil, 2-1 on the top 3 plays last week. Tennessee got us by the hook, but we were just talking before the show. Line moved a little bit on that game. A lot of people might have got a pure 7 on that, so maybe we got a push, but Mississippi State, they had their chances in that game. Could have won it straight up. I'm really impressed with Coach Levy and his bunch down there. How you doing? We're approaching the midway point in the season here, Phil.
Yeah, doing well. We're surprised, first of all, that we're done with 5 weeks of college football already, basically 5.5 with week 1 thrown in there, week 0, I should say. So I'm surprised how quick, every season goes by really quick, but it really has moved quick this year. And as you mentioned, if you watch the show on Thursday or Friday, you probably got that as a loss. If you watch the show on Saturday morning, you got the game as a push. So it's but I was very impressed with what Mississippi State did last week. And really, for Tennessee to win the game by 7 in overtime, you're sort of fortunate that they even won the game by 7.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about Mississippi State a little bit later on in the show today. We're going to cover 25, 30 games for you here in the next hour or so. David Kahn, how you doing, man? I know you're angry. It's Yom Kippur. You're hungry. Red Sox lost last night. You doing okay? How's your mental health?
Tripp, I feel exactly like this Campbell fighting camel looks. All right. This is how I feel right now. Just like this camel looks. It is Yom Kippur, so I have not eaten or drank anything since 7:15 last night. It is the annual Jewish tradition of Day of Atonement. You're fasting for 24 hours to ask for forgiveness for all of your sins for the past year. So I'm hanging in there. I'm also angry because I got by the hook last week as well. Thanks, TCU, for nothing. You guys are the worst. But no, I'm doing all right. Game 3 tonight. Go Sox. Connolly early. Just going to roll. All right, let's go. But we're here to talk college football. All right, baseball can wait. It is college football time.
We've hit our limit already on baseball talk. I can already see Phil getting antsy over there. David, you want to take us away to we got a game tonight. Let's see if Phil's got a pick for us.
We certainly do. We have Sam Houston at New Mexico State. Sam Houston still looking for that first win of the season. They're 0-4. New Mexico State 2-2, coming off a 2-game skid, but they're 2-0 at home this year, Phil, and they pass the ball a ton, which is Sam Houston's weakness. They have the worst EPA passing defense in the country, yet you have Sam Houston favored by 2.5 for this 9 p.m. kickoff at New Mexico State. What do you got, Phil?
Yeah, and if you go back to the first week of September, I was surprised Tulsa was a favorite over New Mexico State at home, and naturally New Mexico State beat them 21-14. Pretty shocked Sam Houston's a favorite here. New Mexico State, in my mind, is the better football team and at home. As you mentioned, Logan Fife having a pretty decent year throwing the football. Sam Houston, meanwhile, struggles to throw the football. Their quarterbacks have combined for 2 touchdowns and 4 interceptions this year. Defensively, I would say that, when you look at the two teams, pretty close, but the big home edge for New Mexico State, better team at home. They should be favored. I'm taking New Mexico State plus the points.
All right, let's move to Friday night. Western Kentucky on the road at Delaware. The Blue Hens, now a proud member of Conference USA. They're off to a 3-1 start, wins over UConn and FIU. They played Colorado a little bit closer than that score looked up there in Boulder, too. Pretty good team here. That's why they are a 2.5-point favorite at home over the Tops. Western Kentucky, Maverick McIver, they're going to be looking to throw the football around. He's got an 11-1 ratio. He's been really solid for them. Top's been a good spread team this year, too, Phil. They're 4-1 ATS.
Yeah, and I actually saw a couple of threes out there, and as David mentioned, and we mentioned at the start of the show, those half points can be very valuable. So shop around and get the full 3 if you're going to go Western Kentucky here. But Delaware has been better than I expected, I have to admit. I picked them lower in the conference, figuring an FCS team coming up. But as you pointed out, Tripp, they actually were only out first down by 2. Had the yards were close against Colorado. The Connecticut game, that was a back-forth ball game. Delaware's offense couldn't be stopped. It was 44. They ended up pulling out the win. Connecticut had the ball deep in Delaware territory, up by 3 with the chance to cover, got stopped on downs. Delaware ended up winning it late. But last week they went on the road and beat Florida International. So this is a good Delaware team. I like the way that Miniucci is throwing the football. He's got an 8-2 ratio this year. I'm a little higher on Maverick McIver. He's got 11-2 ratio. And, of course, Western is a veteran of CUSA football, knows how to win on the road. You go back to last year, they beat Middle Tennessee on the road. They beat Sam Houston on the road. They beat New Mexico State on the road. Their only loss was to Liberty on the road during the year. So you've got a more veteran Western Kentucky team, more used to CUSA play. I'm going to take Western plus the 3, and I'm going to say they win outright.
Phil calling for an outright win for the Hilltoppers on the road. Love that. All right, we're staying on the Friday night slate. Late night kick out in Provo, 10:30 p.m. Eastern. Phil, I will be on the board for this one. I will be tired. I go to bed at 10:30. This game is starting at 10:30. This is going to be a tired night for me. West Virginia at BYU. Perfect. Number 23, BYU, who survived against Colorado last week. They're 4-0. They won their Big 12 opener. West Virginia, meanwhile, 2-3, 0-2 in the Big 12. They got whacked again by Utah last week. We all saw that coming with how, annoyed Utah was after their performance against Texas Tech. And the injuries just completely continue to pile up. Jalen Henderson's now questionable, so we might see Khalil Wilkins at quarterback, who looked okay in reserve duty for West Virginia last week, but that was when that game was long decided. Now there's reports Nico Marchiol is going to redshirt medically and transfer. So West Virginia is just they've gone from bad to bad or to more bad to worse. And it's also a 10:30 body clock kick for WVU. BYU favored by 18.5. I find it hard to believe they don't cover that one, right, Phil?
Yeah, I definitely like BYU in this one. And, with West Virginia, I do a West Virginia podcast every Thursday morning. And Jalen Henderson's actually out in this game for West Virginia. But I'll say this. When I talked to Rich Rod and went over the team with him this year, he said he liked 5 different quarterbacks. Well, it's good that he liked 5 quarterbacks because he's going to have to use them all. Look for Khalil Wilkins. Look for Scotty Fox to play here. And, Henderson was the team's leading rusher. Marchiol was the guy that was their top quarterback, but as you mentioned, going to transfer. Defensively, West Virginia playing okay. I mean, they're holding opponents to 13 yards per game below their average. And I haven't been blown away with BYU's offense this year. They're not getting huge margins. They did beat East Carolina by 21, but you got the altitude advantage here. You've got the late night thing going. And we've discussed it on the show before. These teams that are flying east to west and playing the 10:30 game, they tend to go to sleep in the second half of the games, and the West Coast teams pull away. So all those factors added up. I'll take BYU minus the points here. Frankly, I'm a little surprised the number's under 21.
All right, West Virginia football. You heard it from David Kahn. From bad to more bad to worse. Great way to put it, Dave. All right, let's head to Saturday in the noon slate. Phil, I know we're not crazy about big spreads in Sanford Stadium for the Dogs to cover, but maybe we're going to make an exception this week off a straight up loss to Bama at home last week. Kirby, he's probably really just taking it easy on his guys this week, making sure they're hydrated, get them some massage. Now, none of that's happening. He's going to have those guys playing with their hair on fire on Saturday afternoon. Outside of the game against Ole Miss, where they hung around, Kentucky really hasn't given us much this year to be excited about. They're 1-3 against the spread. Are you comfortable laying this big number with the Dogs at home? I'm seeing 20.5 right now.
Yeah, I would. It wouldn't be one of my top plays of the week, but I would actually, as much as I hate Georgia as a home favorite, and they haven't covered as a home favorite all year, and have a really bad record the last couple of years as a home favorite, as long as you're laying less than 21. Do keep in mind Kentucky has covered 5 of the last 6 in the series. Now, the last time they played here, Georgia won big. They won that game against Kentucky 51-13. And so they have that potential. Cutter Boley, I mean, he's a talented quarterback, but he's still playing like the youngster that he is and going against that Georgia defense that's giving up some yards unexpectedly in a couple games, but holding opponents under 1 below their average. I'm going to take Georgia, but once it starts getting above 21, I'd be concerned. So grab it at 20.5 if you're going to play Georgia, because they are just such a poor home favorite.
Might have a situation, Phil, where last week we mentioned Utah was annoyed after their result, and we're going to come out with a vengeance. Could see the same thing from Georgia to cover that lofty spread. Let's stay in the Big 12, or go back to the Big 12, I should say. Number 14, Iowa State, perfect at 5-0 on the road at Cincinnati, 3-1. They won their Big 12 opener as well. This line, Cincinnati by 1.5, a little fishy in my eyes, but could be due to the home field advantage for the Bearcats and the fact that their quarterback, Brendan Sorsby, is the second highest rated passer in the Big 12, which favors the Bearcats against the Cyclones' kind of beat up secondary. But Iowa State's won 7 of the last 9 on the road. Where do you see this one going, Phil?
Yeah, and of course, Iowa State suffered some big losses. They lost their top 2 cornerbacks, and really the top 2 players in the secondary are both out for the year. You know, when I went over the team with Coach Campbell this year, though, as we went through the roster on the defense, he had told me at the start, hey, Phil, our defense was all banged up last year. And then as we went position by position, you could just tell. I mean, they actually lost like 6-7 starters off the defense last year and still had a really good year. You know, beat Baylor 43-21, went into West Virginia, beat them 28-16. So they're capable of overcoming the injuries. And Cincinnati's a team that I has one of the dark horses in the Big 12. I think they're really a play-on team this year. After 2 years of being inexperienced under Scott Satterfield, they actually have an experienced squad. You mentioned Sorsby's got a 10-1 ratio. But when I look at Iowa State, I just think they're one of the best teams in the Big 12. And so I'm going to call for Iowa State to go on the road, get the win. My advice would be, when the injury news hits and settles in that Iowa State's missing their top 2 corners, this spread might climb to +3. So if you're going to incline to bet Iowa State, wait for that to move up to maybe 3 and get the full 3. But I do think Iowa State wins the game outright and continues on their roll towards a possible Big 12 title this year.
That's good advice there. If you like the Cyclones, be patient. We'll probably see a couple ticks in that point going their way. Let's jump back to the ACC. When Belichick took over at UNC, we probably didn't think they'd have their matchup with Clemson as a noon kick, but here we are. We've got a pair of struggling teams at Kenan Stadium on Saturday. We talked about this on Tuesday's show. Clemson, believe it or not, they're not totally dead yet in the ACC. I know they've had a nightmare start to the season, but they still have a pulse. They're a 2-touchdown favorite this week at UNC. They're going to be favored at Boston College, but if they get those 2 wins on the road, a little bit of momentum, who knows? Maybe they end up being favored when they host Florida State, maybe at Louisville. My point is there's still a lot of football left to be played for the Tigers. Do we finally see one of their top-notch elite performances that we know they can hit? I don't know, but the Tar Heels, they've got their own issues. I'm not sure if we're going to get Gio Lopez or Max Johnson at quarterback here. Phil, what do you like in this one?
Yeah, I'm going to say that Clemson finally shows up this year. They haven't showed up at the start of the year, but as you touched on, Tripp, you go back to last year, everybody thought they were cooked. They weren't going to make it. And had Miami of Florida beat Syracuse, they wouldn't have been in the ACC title game. They somehow got to the ACC title game, somehow won it, and then all of a sudden they're in the playoffs. So I think that could be sold over the bye week, and I think you're going to see an angry Clemson team come out here. One that has messed up on a season that could have been much better, but still have their opportunities. With North Carolina, you know, after watching them against UCF, against TCU, Bill Belichick, yeah, great head, one of the greatest head coaches of all time, but I think he's got his hands full here with North Carolina. Doesn't have the talent to match up with Clemson, and I've got to go with Clemson to win this one and win it comfortably. I think getting them off a bye, I'm going to think Clemson comes out here and plays up to their talent level.
Chad agrees with you, Phil. They say Clemson rolls in this one. So we'll see what happens in Chapel Hill. Our man Roddy Jones going to be on the call as well. So excited to listen to Roddy for that one, Clemson and North Carolina. I'll be like Phil on Saturday. I get to watch college football. Let's go. I'm not working a game.
Weird, isn't it?
It is going to be weird. I'm here for it.
How many TVs, David?
Well, I'll be in a hotel in Wisconsin before a wedding. So so one TV, but I'll have an iPad and a laptop. So 3. Okay. So I'll have and a phone. So I'll have 4 actually. 4 going at once. Not 12 like you, Phil, but I'll have 4 going. No, nothing can beat your setup. It's remarkable. And what's also remarkable, by the way, homefieldapparel.com. I am rocking my Campbell Fighting Camels Homefield apparel. It's a long sleeve. I've got the sleeves pulled up right now, but there you go. It's super comfortable. I feel like I'm being hugged in like one of those, fleece blankets right now that are so cozy. I'm wearing it today. I'm rocking it. I already told you why I'm wearing this particular shirt, but I love the stuff from Homefield Apparel. We've got some great gear from those guys. They're fantastic. No, they're not anywhere this weekend for their Can't Miss Kickoff Tour, but go to homefieldapparel.com. Use the code PHIL15. That's PHIL 15 for 15% off your order at Homefield Apparel. We love those guys. Everybody loves them. Go there, get yourself some nice college swag, and settle in and cozy up with it as you watch these Week 6 games. As we continue on the Week 6 card, Phil, we go back to the Big Ten, and we get Wisconsin at number 20, Michigan. Huge spread for Michigan at 17.5 at home at noon. And this game is fascinating to me because Michigan thrives on the ground with Justice Haynes, and Wisconsin has the top run defense in the country. So you got strength on strength there. The onus, I guess, falls on Bryce Underwood at quarterback to win the game for the Wolverines, and that may be tough with how beat up Michigan's offensive line is, right, Phil?
Yeah, I agree with you. When you take a look at Wisconsin, the one thing that Coach Fickle did once he took over, we're running a defense with like 2 defensive linemen and 2 outside linebackers up front. He got them bigger up front, and it showed this year. In fact, he was super high on the defense front, being better against the rush. And as you mentioned, they're only allowing 50 yards per game, 2.1 yards per carry. So very good rush defense. My concern with Wisconsin would be the offense. I didn't like what I saw in the game against Maryland. They allowed 6 sacks, gave up 4 sacks to Alabama in the game prior. I don't think Billy Edwards will be 100%. We saw he could barely walk in the game against Maryland. Danny O'Neill figures to get the call once again. And Michigan's got a really good defense. I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. Probably my favorite play here would be in the under in this one, knowing that Wisconsin takes away what Michigan does best. So I'm going to say under in this one. I'll let you guys pick the side.
Ooh, Tripp, you got to lean here. I love the under at 43.5. I think that's a sensational play. But what do you think on a side? I don't have a pick here.
Yeah, I like the under too. If anything, I would lean with Michigan a little bit.
Okay. All right.
Let's keep it in the Big Ten. Phil, you liked Illinois last week. They pulled off the upset, knocked off USC and Champaign. Now the Illini head to Purdue. They're off that big win, but guess who's on deck? Ohio State. A little bit of a sandwich. It's a lot of bit of a sandwich spot here for the Illini. Luke Altmaier, Big Ten Player of the Week after that game against the Trojans. Even after that blowout loss to Indiana 2 weeks ago where they only scored 10, their offense averaging 36 points per game. Maybe that loss is what they needed. That's the only game they hadn't covered the spread in all year was Indiana. They're 4-1 ATS. But Purdue, we know they've shown they're a better team than what they fielded last season. Been very competitive, even with Notre Dame until the wheels kind of came off late in that one. The Boilermakers had last week off. Ryan Brown's been a nice surprise for them. He's playing well, and they've been good in this series, but looks like Illinois favored by 9.5. Do you think Purdue can keep it close here, or are the Illini going to roll?
Yeah, normally this would be a big sandwich spot, I think, coming off of the USC game with Ohio State on deck. However, 2 weeks ago, Illinois was just shattered after that 63-10 loss. All their hopes and dreams of making the playoff appeared gone. And then they've got it handed back to them now after that impressive win. And I say impressive. There was a late second field goal to get past USC. But let's remember, Illinois twice fumbled into the end zone for a touchback. They could easily have won that game by a couple of touchdowns. Got back to playing Illinois football. It's sort of like getting a pardon at the last minute and get reprieved. I think they'll have a little extra bounce in their step. Plus, if you watch last year's game with Illinois and Purdue, Illinois absolutely dominated the first half. It wasn't even a game. And then they started thinking ahead, hey, we got Michigan. We got our 100th anniversary game. They're going to be wearing the old helmets. It's Michigan on deck. And Purdue not only came back in the second half, they took the lead in the second half. Illinois was lucky to win that game in overtime. So there's no doubt if Illinois gets up in this game, Brett Bielema, all he has to do is say, and this is a veteran Illinois team, by the way. The majority of these players were here last year. All he has to do is remember last year, you guys led up and you almost lost to Purdue. So I don't think they led up. And you go back to the second half against Notre Dame. Purdue played a great first half against the Irish, but then got blown away in the second half. I just don't think they're as talented. This is an Illinois team that went on the road, beat Duke by 26. I think they're capable of covering the 9.5. Grab it while it's single digits. I like Illinois in this one.
All right, Phil, time to get a little weird in the noon window because we've got a service academy game. We've got Air Force at Navy, first leg of that Commanders-in-Chief trophy as Navy tries to hang on to it for a second straight year after they won it in 2024. You've got another game where you're going to have a battle in the trenches that's going to be huge. Navy runs the ball really well. Air Force defends it extremely well. Navy at 4-0, favored by 12.5 at home. But the road team has won 3 of the last 4 in this series, Phil. What's going to happen?
Every time you get an option versus option, just like last week when Navy played Rice runs the option now. I always side with 2 things, the underdog and the under. And both came true in the Navy-Rice game last week. Navy won that 21-13. They were laying 2 touchdowns. Game easily went under the total. And why is that? Well, the reason for it is the option is a weapon because teams cannot prepare for the option. They don't have the personnel. They don't run the option. So even if they had the personnel and tried to run it in practice, they could not run it anywhere near the speed that the option runs. However, when an option team plays an option team, naturally you can defend the option. All the advantages the offense has in a normal game are taken away. And that's why so many of the games between the service academies and now when you throw Rice into the equation are going to go under the total and the underdog wins. You look at this matchup, it is an underdog heavy series. The underdog's done extremely well. In fact, I think 11 outright upsets in the last 22 years. And then the other thing here is the last 4 times Navy has actually beaten Air Force like they did last year. The 4 times prior to that, Navy beat Air Force, lost straight up and against the spread, lost straight up and against the spread, all the way down the line. So you've got an underdog series. You got Air Force knows how to defend the option. They're 4-0 against the spread the last 4 times they lost to Navy. I'm taking Air Force. And I also, as bad as Air Force has looked, the Air Force has been a pure over team. Navy's been an over team, but option versus option, you actually have to lean with the under. And I think the total's up there at like 52. So Air Force is my play, but I also have to look at the under.
Yeah, 52.5 in the service academies. What is Vegas thinking here?
And
Gotta
plus,
go with the under.
Plus, they run the football all game long. That clock just runs.
Yeah. All right. We're still in the noon window, kind of a loaded noon slate this week. We've got another big one in Waco. Baylor hosting Kansas State. Both of these teams got back on track last week. The Bears with a win at Oklahoma State. We talked a lot about Sawyer Robertson the last couple of years on this show. Just a great quarterback, 17-3 ratio, had another game right at 400 yards last week. Kansas State, they probably needed their win even worse last week. They knocked off and covered at home against UCF. Avery Johnson getting it done through the air with his legs. Good dual threat quarterback there. They've got 3 losses. You combine them all, it's only 12 points. So let's not completely fall asleep on Kansas State here. Baylor's laying right at a touchdown at home. Both teams have really stunk against the spread this year, though, Phil, 1-4.
Yeah, and it's an interesting battle. Kansas State survived the Ireland thing. The teams that lose in Ireland generally struggle. Florida State 2-10 last year. They got past those 4 games, had a bye, got refreshed, beat UCF. So I think that's a good thing for Kansas State. And believe it or not, that Arizona game was a non-conference game. So they actually only have 1 Big 12 loss this year. Iowa State, Baylor has 1 Big 12 loss. Neither one can afford a second because I think the Big 12 champ at the worst case probably, or Big 12 title game might have 1-2 losses, and you want to be at that point. I think Baylor is a slightly better team, and at home I find it tough to go against Kansas State. I would have the spread at about 7. That's where about the spread is, 6.5. Once again, this is a game I'm going to throw to you two guys. Either of you two feel strongly about one of these 2 teams?
Tripp, what do you got?
I don't know if I'm going to say strongly, but I'm leaning with the home team in Baylor.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. I'm with Tripp on Baylor minus 6.5.
There we go. Lock of the year from you guys. Love it.
No, not even close. Give me the key. I'm going to open that lock right back up.
All right. We haven't mentioned it yet. Let's go back to the ACC. How about those Hokies last week, boys? Yeah. 10-point dog, got the outright win in Raleigh. NC State, I don't know what to say. You're just too predictable. Phil, good on the Hokies. I mean, so many of those guys sat out last night. Like Caleb Woodson, one of their best linebackers, he sat out. They had a lot of guys miss that game, but they got the win. And if you saw the fourth down stop, by the way, if you were watching the end of that game, even though Virginia Tech was on their side of the field, they had a chance to go for it on fourth down. They needed about a foot. I would have done that, but they did punt the ball back to NC State. It worked out. They got the fourth down stop. But if you saw the emotion on the sideline after that stop, when Virginia Tech won the game, you just think, wow, good on those guys. They haven't quit. Now the Hokies are back at home. It's a 1:00 kick at Lane Stadium. They've got Wake Forest in town. What a crazy game for the Deacs last week against Georgia Tech. They led 20-3. And I didn't get to see it live, but apparently the refs missed an offsides call on Georgia Tech that could have ended the game. Ashford tried to throw it down, and he thought he had a free play. They didn't. It goes to overtime. Georgia Tech gets the win. And I wonder if the Deacs can get back up for this one. They're getting right at a touchdown, 6.5 on the road. What do you like in this one, Phil?
Yeah, first of all, nice call last week, Tripp. That was a great call, picking Virginia Tech, a depleted team, taking on NC State. You hit it right on the head. So great call there. In this one, I'm going to lean with Virginia Tech. And they've had 6 bad quarters this year. I mean, you go back to the South Carolina game. I thought they played South Carolina even up, maybe even a little bit better. They had 2 big plays go against them. They led Vanderbilt 20-10 at the half. That's a really good Vanderbilt team. Then they had 2 really bad quarters and then 4 really bad quarters against Old Dominion. And that's why there was a coaching change. They back to playing good ball. I like Kyron Jones at QB. It's, Blacksburg. The crowd should start getting back into it now that they've had a couple of wins. Perhaps they've saved their season. I thought Wake should have beaten Georgia Tech last week. They completely outplayed them a good portion of it. But Georgia Tech is 2 things. I mean, I think they're 500 against teams that aren't ranked, and they're almost unbeaten against teams that are ranked. They only get up for ranked foes, and evidently they forgot to get up for Wake Forest last week. Wake Forest is the same team that did lose to NC State by 10 at home. I'm going to go with Virginia Tech in this one, Tripp.
Okay.
The chat is elated by that, Phil, by the way, that you're going with Virginia Tech. Our man Danny214 is just all kinds of hyped that Virginia Tech is the play for this week. All right, big game in the SEC. Huge. Number 16, Vanderbilt, at number 10, Alabama. Vandy 5-0, Alabama 3-1, and laying 10.5 in Tuscaloosa. We all remember what happened last year in Nashville. I'm pretty sure that goalpost has washed out into the Atlantic Ocean by now, if the Nashville Fire Department hadn't taken it, out of the Cumberland River. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Vanderbilt, Phil, speaking of against the spread, they're the top-rated team against the spread at plus 72, followed closely by Louisiana Tech. Shout out Kyle Schasberger at 70. They're also averaging the second most points in the country. But this is easily their toughest test of the year when they're facing Alabama, who's favored big at home after winning again over Georgia. You got College Game Day in town. First time these teams are facing each other as ranked foes since 1937. We all got to know, Phil, how's this one playing out?
Yeah, and first of all, you'd be broke if you went against Pavia as an underdog. I mean, this guy just wins and covers. As an away dog, they are 6-0 straight, or 6-0 ATS with a lot of upset wins. So Pavia, away dog, that is tremendous. And Vanderbilt's been playing really good. You look at their offense, putting up nearly 500 yards per game. Great story. And I don't think it's just a story. I think Clark Lee has really got this Vanderbilt team believing that they can win. He's got this team showing they can win. I mean, to go into South Carolina, come out with a big win like that. But I'm going to side with Alabama in this one. And here's the reasons why. If you go back and look at Vanderbilt, go to the Virginia Tech game. As I mentioned, a big second half. They were outplayed in the first half, but maybe they caught a team that, the next week, Virginia Tech got outplayed by Old Dominion, top to bottom. And then South Carolina, it was 7-7 in the first quarter when Lenora Sellers went out with injury. So they benefited from South Carolina having a backup quarterback, took advantage of that. Alabama is not, they're off a big win over Georgia, but they are playing with legitimate revenge. I mean, they lost that game. They have heard you lost to Vanderbilt, you lost to Vanderbilt, you lost to Vanderbilt. And I think Alabama is one of the best teams in the country. I know they lost to Florida State in the opener, but I think talent-wise they're there. I really like the fact they got J.M. Miller back at running back last week. I think he could really emerge this week. So add it all up, I think Bama's a better team playing with revenge. I'm going to take the Tide minus the 10.5.
All right, let's keep it in the SEC. Texas Longhorns on their way to Gainesville to take on the Florida Gators. We got a 3:30 kick in the Swamp. Texas laying 6.5 on the road. Both these teams coming off a bye. Did Texas finally get right in that win over Sam Houston? That's finally, they looked sharper in that one than they did in the 2 weeks previous where they won, but they didn't cover. Both these teams look very good defensively. Florida is coming into this one, though, 1-3 straight up and against the spread. Last season, they were manhandled in Austin, 49-17. I immediately thought under here, but it's all the way down to 41.5. Do you have a side on this one, Phil?
Yeah, I think the under might be your best play here. And let's keep in mind, last year when these two played in Texas, Florida started Aiden Warner at quarterback, and he was a FCS transfer that hadn't even played at the FCS. I hadn't even won a job at the FCS level, and they threw him to the Lions playing Texas on the road. That's why that game was a blowout. And Florida's defense played good early, but then once it turned into a blowout, it sort of snowballed. So this is going to be a completely different game than last year. Arch Manning looked great against Sam Houston. I think a lot of teams are going to look good against Sam Houston this year. So this is now taking on a really good defense here in Florida. I think Florida will keep this one tighter than expected. It wouldn't surprise me if Florida won this game outright. However, how do you put your money on Florida with what they've done? I mean, they were the better team in South Florida. They shot themselves in the foot. They had a 23-10 first down edge at LSU, but had 5 turnovers. 5 interceptions by Lagway. Can you trust Lagway not to make the turnover? Texas has a great defense. Florida has a great defense. I think under is probably the best play here. And like I said, an upset wouldn't surprise me, but Florida's got to cut the mistakes out that have really killed them this year.
Yeah, 41.5. It is a little bit scary, but I mean, I think if I was going to lean on the total, I probably would still go with the under. Two good defensive teams there.
All right, let's go to Boise State at Notre Dame, still in the 3:30 window, guys. Notre Dame, number 21 now in the country after finally flexing its muscles offensively against Arkansas. CJ Carr, fantastic. Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price continuing to roll. The Broncos, though, Phil, they've recovered well since that season-opening loss to USF. 3-game winning streak, more than 45 in each game, albeit against, inferior competition. But it just kind of feels like the Irish will have too much firepower for Boise State, and the line shows that Notre Dame's favored by 20.5.
Yeah, normally with Notre Dame, I think their one weakness is when they play group of 5 teams. Freeman is 3-6 against the spread in those games. However, once they get past the early season games like Northern Illinois last year, they usually go on great spread streaks. I remember a few years ago, they won like 9 in a row against the spread. They do extremely well. And Boise's not your typical group of 5 team. They're a team that Notre Dame knows who they are. You follow Boise. Boise was in the playoff last year, so was Notre Dame. So they're not going to look past Boise State. And like I said, Boise earlier, when they played USF, I thought they were much better than the final score. I thought they outplayed USF a good portion of the game until that fake punt for a touchdown turned the game around. But overall, I just think Notre Dame's more talented. The defense is getting better. And here's a surprising stat for you. As much as you look at the Notre Dame defense, you say, hey, they're allowing 28 points per game, 389 yards per game. They're actually holding their opponents to 83 yards per game below their average. So they've taken out some really good offenses and held them well below their season average. I think the Irish are a complete team. Their problem against Miami was they didn't establish the Love-Price combo running the football. Texas A&M got a 4th and 11 touchdown at the end of the game to beat them. I look for the Irish to be very impressive down the stretch. I'll take Notre Dame, grab them while it's under 21 here.
All right, we'll keep it we'll head to the ACC. I'm still very ill with the Virginia Cavaliers for that little stunt they pulled against Florida State last Friday night. Wahoos are on the road this week. Another really good ACC matchup here at Louisville. The Cardinals undefeated and about a touchdown favorite at home. I'm seeing 6.5. Last year, Virginia started 4-1, but that Louisville game is really where things kind of spiraled. They ended up finishing 5-7. I think this is a different Virginia team, though. 5th in the nation, 540 yards per game on offense. Maybe you could argue this could be a little bit of a letdown spot here, but Louisville, meanwhile, they trailed last week at Pitt, able to come back and win. We mentioned on the show last week they were very banged up at running back, only had 53 yards on 34 carries against Pitt. Phil, this should still be a very fun game to watch. It's a 61.5-point total here. We're probably going to see some points. Who do you like in this one?
I like Virginia. And I'll go back to last year's game for a moment. Virginia was a 7-point dog in that one. And yet at the end of the game, Virginia's winning. And Louisville needed a late touchdown to pull out a 4-point win. Virginia still easily covered. Could have won the game outright. Now, last year's Virginia played to an average game grade of 88 in my average game grades on Steele Plus. This year, they're playing to a level of 114. So they are a vastly improved team. As you touched on, Tripp, they're averaging 5.6 yards per carry. They're completing 69% of their passes. They've only allowed 3 sacks all year, and they're putting up 46 points per game. Now, Louisville, on the other hand, was a really good team last year. They had an average game grade of 114.6. They're not up there this year. They're a weaker team. Their numbers are well down. Their rushing totals down. Their ratios way down as well. Their Miller Moss and Brady Allen have combined for 6 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Last year, they had 26 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. So this is not as good a Louisville team. I thought James Madison came in here and outplayed them. And of course, you mentioned they trailed Pitt 17-0 until that they run into the punt returner and they gave the ball to Louisville at the 3. Then Pitt dropped a snap on the punt. They got the ball at the 20. I think when you're looking at this matchup, Louisville's a much better team than last year. Virginia is. Louisville's not as good as last year. I think Virginia could pull the upset. And pointing to your letdown thing, Tripp, on my Phil Steele Plus Tour with selections, I went back and looked at the last 7 times Virginia has upset a team. They're actually 6-1 against the spread the next week. So normally teams show a letdown. Virginia almost says, hey, let's do it again. And it is 6-1 against the spread after pulling a big upset.
All right, back to the Big Ten, Phil, as we stay in the 3:30 window. Washington at Maryland. The Huskies coming off a disheartening loss to Ohio State at home, now facing a Maryland team that has not trailed in a game all season, albeit against mostly lesser competition if you don't, count Wisconsin. But the Huskies are 1-7 in true road games under Jed Fish. And when you look at this game, I think it's going to come down to Jonah Coleman. No surprise there for UW. He leads the nation in scoring. But Maryland's very adept at turning teams over, especially with interceptions. So they're going to have to tote the rock a lot with Coleman.
Let me ask you a question, David. Who's the Big Ten leader in sacks per game? Which team?
Well, I would guess it's Maryland.
That's right. It's Maryland. 16 sacks in just 4 games this year. Their defensive front getting after teams. And for Washington, that was a massive home game last week against Ohio State. They probably came in, and they did have a shot at winning. It was a 1-score game in the 4th quarter. And now you're off that massive home game, traveling clear across the country to play Maryland, a team off a bye. Now, a negative would be that Mike Locksley doesn't do well off a bye. He hasn't won a game off a bye. But you got to think last year, because this year when I talked to Coach Locksley, he said, hey, Phil, last year we lost the locker room. And this year they've got that locker room back, as you mentioned, haven't trailed for a single minute. And all the talk's going to be about Damon Williams because he's the quarterback. But how about Malik Washington? He's a true freshman quarterback for Maryland that has really grabbed this offense. He's got an 8-1 ratio. And unlike Damon, who's vertically challenged, Malik Washington is everything you want in a QB. So I think this is an underrated Maryland team at home, catching Washington in a tough situation, fresh off a bye. I like the Terps to potentially even pull the upset here.
Okay.
All right. I like that. I like that play, Phil. Let's stay in the Big Ten one more time as we go to the 4 p.m. game, the lone 4 p.m. game that we're going to get into here on the Phil Steele Show. By the way, thanks to everyone for chiming into the chat and tuning in. We appreciate all of your viewership and interactions as well. We got Michigan State at Nebraska, pair of 3-1 teams that are both trying to get their first win in the Big Ten this year. Phil, I got to be honest, this game makes me want to run away screaming and bury my head into a pillow so I don't have to think about it ever again. I don't like anything in this game. You've got Nebraska favored by 11.5 at home, both teams coming off their first loss. Nebraska is 6-1 against Michigan State at home, but each of these past 5 meetings have been decided by 5 points or less. I don't know whether to go with Michigan State to cover, Nebraska to win outright, over, under. I'm lost. You got to help me out here. What do we got?
All right, this one I do like a side. And, when you take a look at the two teams, they both rely on passing the football. Aiden Childs started out last year as a turnover machine, but at like the second half of the season, very few turnovers. This year he only has 1 interception, 9 touchdown passes. He is a top-notch QB, and he's got a really good receiving core. Nick Marsh now has a counter person on the other side in Omari Kelly. That's a good passing offense. In Nebraska, how about Dylan Raiola? Last year Dylan Raiola was a true freshman, and he went through the learning process of being a true freshman. Now he's a veteran sophomore quarterback, and he looks like that VHT QB that came out of high school. He's hitting 76% of his passes. He's got an 11-1 ratio this year. So you got 2 really good passing offenses, right? Let's take a look at the defense. Who's got Michigan State's pass defense? Actually ranks number 110. They're allowing 68% completions, and they don't get much pressure on the quarterback. Remember last year, they went through that stretch like 5 straight games without getting a sack. They did get 4 sacks against Western Michigan, but only 2 in the last 3 games. Now you flip it over to Nebraska. Nebraska's number 1 in pass defense this year. They're allowing 50%. They're only allowing 76 yards per game. And in fact, when I saw that 76 yards per game in my pass defense rankings, I'm like, there's got to be a mistake here. There's got to be a typo. Nope. The 76 yards per game passing, they've allowed 0 touchdown passes and 1 interception. So you have a really good pass defense versus a weak pass defense. 2 teams that like to throw the ball. Nebraska's at home. And keep in mind, Nebraska had a 23-16 first down edge against Michigan. Their problem was they couldn't stop the run. I don't think Michigan State's going to be able to run the ball like that on them. So I'm going to take Nebraska minus the points in this one.
All right, how about some Mountain West action? We've got UNLV still undefeated, but the Rebels have played with fire a couple of times this season. Remember that crazy comeback a couple of weeks ago at Miami, Ohio. Dan Mullen's crew back on the road. They're at Wyoming, laying 3.5. Calandria, we kind of know the rap on him now. He's a really talented guy, but he will turn the ball over. He had a couple picks last time out, so he's got some turnover issues. Cowboys 2-2 on the year. They're coming off back-to-back losses at Colorado and against Utah. Do you have a side you like here in this one, Phil?
Yeah, I'm going to lean with Wyoming as a home dog. Their altitude advantage is heightened by being at home for a second straight week. That's nice. Coming off a bye, I think the altitude is huge. And just haven't been blown away with UNLV. As you mentioned, they're 4-0. And they somehow covered against Miami of Ohio on the road. They're laying over a field goal here, like 3.5, 4. Started out the week at 5.5. Has been bet down to 3.5. I think a lot of folks are coming in on Wyoming. I just not super confident on Wyoming as a team, but it is a really good situation for Wyoming here. So I'm going to lean with Wyoming in this one. Wouldn't be one of my top plays on the board, though.
Hey, Phil, do you have any – I noticed the total on this one has moved down a little bit. It was 51.5 on Tuesday. It's down to 49.5. The only reason it sticks out to me is we know Dan Mullen is a little bit, defense optional kind of coach here lately. So I don't know. Over might be in play for me.
I tell you what, UNLV's defense is allowing teams 101 yards per game above their average. And that doesn't even include the Idaho State game to open up the year where they allowed them 132 above. Wyoming's defense is allowing teams 58 yards per game above their average. I got to think if you're Wyoming, you're going to try to shrink the clock, keep the ball out of UNLV's hands. But I do think UNLV's an over team. That number does appear cheap. You might be onto something there, Tripp.
Oh, man. Here we go.
Lock doctor sniffing it over. All right. I like it. Okay. All right, Phil. Huge one in the Big 12 as we get into the night slate. 7 p.m. kick. Number 11, Texas Tech at Houston. Both teams off to their best start. For Houston since 2016. For Texas Tech since 2013. The last time they were 4-0. Texas Tech, top passing offense in the country. Baron Morton has been cleared to play after taking that hit against Utah a couple weeks back. Houston, though, the number 2 pass defense in the Big 12. The Red Raiders laying 10.5 on the road. What's the play here, Phil?
Yeah, I'm going to lean with Houston plus the points. You go back to last year, Houston was just 4-8, but they actually held opponents to 75 yards per game below their season average, which was number 13 in the country. They still have an excellent defense, but this year they actually have an offense. Connor Wegman came over from Texas A&M. He's got a 6-1 ratio. They brought in Dean Connors from Rice, and Dean Connors, of course, was the best player on Rice's team last year. So they have that offense. Maybe I didn't think they were going to look ahead playing Oregon State on a Friday last week, but maybe that's the reason that they needed overtime, come out of there with the win. But they beat Colorado at home 36-20. It's a really good Houston team. I have a lot of faith in Willie Fritz. Now you go to look at Texas Tech. They've got that defensive front, looks great this year. But remember, the Utah game was 10-10 when Morton went out. Then all of a sudden, Will Hammond comes in, running the football out of the quarterback position on him. And I think that surprised Utah a little bit and was one of the reasons that Texas Tech had such a big fourth quarter in that game. Texas Tech does look, talent-wise, like they might be the best team in the Big 12. But I'm going to lean with Houston as the home dog in this one to keep it closer than expected.
Phil, I'm totally with you on the Houston to cover that 10.5 overall, especially after that 14-point fourth quarter comeback last week against the Beavers. Can I interest you in a Texas Tech first half of -6.5? Because the Red Raiders have outscored opponents 133-3 in the first half. The spread is 6.5 for Texas Tech in the first half. Can I interest you in that?
That's good work on your part there, David. I mean, that's a great stat. And what the heck? Let's go with it.
All right.
You locking that one in as your top play of the week?
It might. You know what, Phil? We'll find out at the end of the show. But it might be. It's up there. It's on the board. It's on. I throw darts. All right, at this point, because I've lost by the hook back-to-back weeks. So we're going to throw a dart at the end of the show and see where it lands. But it's on the board for sure.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
DK,
Yeah.
I like it.
I love the research you guys do. Great research.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, let's go back to the Big Ten. Number 1, Ohio State. We already mentioned them. Their big win at Washington last week, snapping that 4-year home winning streak for the Huskies. Now they host Minnesota at home. Buckeyes heavily favored by 23.5. Minnesota has not beaten Ohio State since 2000, but they've got the top 25 defense now they're bringing in to Ohio Stadium. They're going to need it, though, because Julian Sayin leads the country in completion percentage. Meanwhile, Ohio State's defense, like you mentioned, Phil, they have been suffocating, only allowing 5.5 per game. Does Minnesota have any shot to cover the spread here, or is this all Ohio State?
I do think it'll be around the spread, personally, and I think it'll be probably a lower scoring game. As you mentioned, Ohio State leading the nation, holding opponents to 246 yards per game, below their average. Minnesota comes in holding teams to 111 yards below their average, number 22 in the country. Now, last week, Minnesota was completely outplayed by Rutgers in the first half. 243 to 145 was the yardage edge. They sort of got fortunate to keep that within 21-14. I don't really have a play on this one. I think the number's 24. I had Ohio State by 24. This is one I'm going to let do either of you two have a good feeling on this one, because I'm not wild about either side here.
Tripp?
I got nothing here, Dave.
No, neither do I. This is another one. I want to crumple up and throw into a ball and chuck in the trash can, because I don't think there's any good play here.
All right. Well, I think we're all going to have a play on this next game. One of the biggest games on the week. While I'm disappointed this isn't a matchup of undefeateds, I'm very happy this game's got some national relevance again. Miami, FSU, hooking up in Doak Campbell Stadium under the lights. 7:30 kick. Place is going to be bonkers for this one. I mean, for me, Phil, this was the game growing up. More national titles have been decided in this rivalry than probably any other. There's no telling how many more Bobby Bowden could have won if they would have just had a kicker. But in this particular matchup, first time for Miami to go on the road this season. Outside of that, there's not much of a reason to fade the Canes here. Carson Beck has looked like 2023 Carson Beck. Both lines of scrimmage have been really good. Their defensive line with Bain, Mesidor, might be the best in all of college football. But you can make a case for either one of these teams. Florida State maybe a little more dangerous in this one because they're coming off a loss at Virginia last week. Phil, do you have a side you prefer in this one?
Yeah, this will make you happy, Tripp. I like Florida State in this one. And I'm going to call it the don't overreact game because, Florida State, I think, had they beaten Virginia last week, coming into this 4-0, this game might be close to pick 'em, but now they're getting 4.5 at home because they lost last week, and Miami has looked great. You hit it on the head. Miami hasn't been on the road. And I told you earlier in the show, I really like this talent Alabama has this year. And I saw Florida State take on a super talented Alabama and basically outplay them, even at the line of scrimmage in that game. They had a 230 to 67 rushing edge. And this is a series that's been dominated by the underdog. The underdog is 14-6 against the spread, 9 outright upsets in that span. I give Florida State a really good shot. And keep in mind, if Florida State wins this game, even with that Virginia loss, they've got a great shot at potentially even getting to the ACC title game. So great game. It sort of reminds you of those old time games, Tripp, but I'm going with Florida State plus the points.
Love it.
All right, we finally get to Mississippi State, we opened the show with and said, we're going to talk about the Bulldogs. Well, here we go. We're talking about the Bulldogs. Mississippi State, a huge game as they invade College Station to take on number 6, Texas A&M, 7:30 kickoff. Phil, we know how much you love Texas A&M. They're your number 2 surprise team in the country. You're looking great right now with Texas A&M in that play so far. Mississippi State 4-1. They did lose their SEC opener to Tennessee, but they've performed better than people have been expecting. Blake Shapen's been a little lesser than he was the first couple weeks of the season, but still serviceable. They've gotten the job done mostly. What do you see here with Texas A&M laying 14.5 at Kyle Field?
Yeah, and the amazing thing about Mike Elko at Texas A&M, he's just not covering. I mean, he only had 3 covers last year, and this year they've got 1 cover in the 4 games. It was a crime last week that Texas A&M did not cover against Auburn. They totally dominated the game completely. They had a 414 to 177 yard edge, 21-9 first down edge. They settled for 5 field goals and missed 2 of them. And then they gave up that long interception return to the 2-yard line, giving Auburn a touchdown. Somehow at the end of the game, a game you felt completely comfortable with A&M, and they dominated. They only won the game by 6, laying 6.5. So it was just an unbelievable loss for Texas A&M last week against the spread. That would concern me. But as you mentioned, I'm very high on A&M. I think they have the talent. They've got the defense, which can get pressure on you. They've got the run game with Moss and Owens and Daniels. They've got the quarterback in Marcel Reed. They've got the receivers with Craver and Concepcion. They really are a complete team. And when I talked to Mike Elko this year after spring practice, last year he told me that the offensive line was middle of the road SEC. This year he said they have one of the top offensive lines in the country, a Joe Moore Award contender. So they are a complete team. Mississippi State's scary to go against, but I'm sort of torn here. A&M probably a little more than 14, but the fact that he's not covering these games concerns me. It sounds to me like, David, you like Mississippi State here.
Not confidently, but I'd lean that way.
Okay.
Not confidently. I wouldn't. It wouldn't be a top play of the week. It's not even on the board. But I'm leaning Bulldogs to cover the spread, not win though. I think A&M's going to win.
Fair enough.
Well, I really liked Tennessee last week. Tennessee was one of my favorite plays. I thought we would see Mississippi State come back down to earth a little bit. They played really well. I do think we're going to see it this week, though. I'm actually very high on the Aggies this week. I wish it was 13.5, but even at 14.5, I'd still be laying the points if I was going to pick that one. So yeah, Phil, I'm rolling with you with the Aggies. Let's head to the Big 12. TCU, big favorite at home this week over Colorado Frogs. They're laying a big spread, 13.5 against the Buffs, who didn't fare too well on their only other road trip this season at Houston. They lost by 16 in that one. Colorado, they played BYU tough last week, but TCU is going to be motivated off of the loss at Arizona State. I feel like maybe this is a good bounce back spot for the Frogs here, Phil.
Yeah, and I think if you look at TCU off a loss at home, that's a big plus. Also, keep in mind, remember 2023? TCU was a defending team that was just in the national championship game, and Dion came in and beat them at home. So generally, you wouldn't equate that as a revenge game, but I do equate this as a revenge game. And as you mentioned, Tripp, I think Colorado's played a lot better at home. They've only had the one road game and lost that one by 16. TCU, in my mind, very impressive. I thought they were going to win the Arizona State game start to finish. Ended up losing it late. Josh Hoover and company, very explosive on offense, and that defense can get after you with 12 sacks. I'm going to go with TCU and get this one while it's under 2 touchdowns.
The chat's with you, Phil. Our man Will Hildebrand says TCU big. All over it. All right, let's go to the American Conference. We got 3 games left to talk about with you, Phil. Finishing up our 25-ish game slate this week. You got Tulsa at Memphis. The Tigers are a wagon right now. Nation's longest active winning streak at 9 games. They got that new RPO style offense this season. It's working for them. They look like they could be on a collision course for the American title game. I know they've still got to play South Florida and my beloved Tulane Green Wave, but Memphis looks really, really good, and they're favored huge at home against Tulsa, 20.5, who really, their bright spot this season is that win over Oklahoma State. The Tigers, I think, just seem too stout for them. What do you think, Phil?
When you play on the streak, you can win many times, you lose only once. You play against a streak, you can lose many times, and you win only once. I'm going to play on the streak with Memphis, and I think that this could be a Memphis team where we look at this spread at the end of the year, and Memphis is in the playoff, that he's like, oh, that spread should have been even higher than that. So I like the way Brandon Lewis is operating the offense, the defense playing well. And the good thing for Memphis, their toughest games of the season, I'm talking about USF, Tulane, Navy, they're all at home. Memphis is almost unbeatable here at home. I got to lay the points with Memphis.
Phil, you talk about playing the streak, man. You get me. We've got a casino now about 45 minutes from here in Danville. We got a Caesars up there now.
So yeah, we do.
Don't get me started there on these streaks. I might be having to make a little road trip.
Tripp, you want to hop in the car? Let's go after the show.
Hey, man, seriously, don't tempt me. Don't tempt me. It's been a long time. All right, we're wrapping things up here. We've got a late kick. This isn't the only late kick this weekend, Dave. Duke at Cal. Blue Devils on the road for the second time in 2 weeks. They're going to be getting some miles here. They're at Syracuse last week. Now they're in Berkeley. They were a favorite at Syracuse last week because the Orange were without their quarterback, Angeli, who went down. But geez, Duke rolled in that one, 38-3. It was actually the first under game for Duke this season, and they were able to hold Ricky Collins in check. Cal also picked up a win on the East Coast last week, comeback over Boston College. JKS, their quarterback, you just can't hold this guy down for a whole game. He's struggled in spurts. We've seen him maybe have a slow first half or so, but he always comes back in the second half. I've been really impressed with their quarterback there. And Justin Wilcox, I don't remember the stats here, but I think he's pretty good as a dog, not so good as a favorite. Well, they're a home dog this week. They're getting 2.5, Phil.
Yeah, he's a great home dog. Actually, it's 3 in most spots. And JKS, as you mentioned, Sagapolatelli, the quarterback, I think he's one of the up-and-coming guys. I loved his first start at Oregon State. They knocked off Minnesota by 13, and as mentioned, traveled across the country, beat Boston College last year. You know, Duke struggled at Tulane. We're down 2 scores to NC State, got beat by Illinois by 26, traveling all the way across the country. As you mentioned, Syracuse didn't have their quarterback. Cal does. Cal actually has a good defense as well. Tulane's allowing the opponent 17 yards per game above their average. Cal's holding them to 44 below. And I love the fact it's a late start. We've seen teams go to sleep late at night in these games. So I got to take Cal plus the points. I think Cal wins this one outright.
All right, last game of the slate, Phil. Another 10:30 kick. You got Nevada at Fresno State. The Bulldogs have dominated this series recently, winning the last 4 games. This could be their last meeting for a bit. Fresno State is headed to the Pac-12. And Phil, I think if the Wolfpack are going to cover this spread or possibly pull off the upset over the Bulldogs, they got to get a pass rush going, or E.J. Warner is going to carve them up. And with Nevada's tendency to turn the ball over, their defense is going to need to keep this low scoring for them to have a chance, right?
Yeah, and how about Warner? Started out the season with an 0.5 ratio, and he's now had a 5.0 ratio over the last couple of games, so he's really turned his season around. The thing about Nevada, they're just a scrappy football team. Under Jeff Choate, I'll go back to last year. They almost upset SMU in the opener. They went across the country, beat Troy. They don't have the talent. You look at their talent on paper and in my numbers, and you put them right at the bottom, but somehow they just stay in these games. Middle Tennessee, they led 13-0 in the third quarter. So I think Fresno wins the game, but I find a tough time going against Nevada because they're so scrappy and play it tough. It's another one I'll let one of you guys pick if you like one of these 2 teams.
I'm right with you. Nevada to cover, Fresno to win.
There we go. I like
Yep.
how confident you are, David.
That's good. Yeah, it's good to see that confidence come through here, DK. All right, Phil, we're wrapping up here. We've had you for an hour. We appreciate your time. If we can, we went 2-1 or maybe 2-0-1 last week on the top three, depending on when you got that Tennessee game picked. What's your top three plays for this week?
Well, the 3 games I'm going to throw out at you, we talked about 2 of them. One would be Nebraska. I gave you the reasons why. Another one would be Illinois. Once again, I gave you the reasons why. And then the other one, I do the podcast every week with Stephen Hartzell and Wayne Cook. And Stephen always asks me for an under the rated game. He likes me when I pick MAC games. So I'm going to give you a MAC game. I'm going to take Akron plus 7.5 over Central Michigan. Akron's a team that didn't cover against Wyoming in their first home game, but they were down 3-0, throwing in the end zone, got intercepted, gave up 2 big pass plays, lost by 10. I think Central is not as good as Wyoming. I'm going to take Akron plus 7.5 in a potential upset.
All right. I just got my top play of the week. It just came to me. I'm going with Akron plus 7.5.
Guys, we are 1 month
that we haven't talked about. Those are normally pretty good picks there.
We are 1 month away from Maction, midweek Maction. All right, let's get excited. All right, Tuesday, Wednesday football.
It's coming.
You turn on the MAC network or what? CBS Sports Network Triple Plus. I'm here for it.
Who you got, David?
Yeah.
I'm riding with Akron. Come on, absolutely. When you drop that one in there, you have to do it. 100%. Got to ride the Akron plus 7.
Do you have any of your own picks here, David?
Well, I mean, I actually, before Phil even said it, the top play on the board was under in the Air Force Navy game. So I'm going to roll with that because I love that play. I'm going Air Force Navy under. And you know what, Phil? Because you believed in the play so much, I'm going to throw a second one on the board, and I'm going to dart that Texas Tech minus 6.5 in the first half.
There you go.
There we go. I like that. That's a great show. I probably shouldn't make any picks after the disastrous week I had last week. I should probably stay away. I like two big favorites, man. I like Georgia. I like Michigan. I like Mississippi, or I like A&M to cover against Mississippi State, but I hate taking those big favorites. But anyways, we'll see how it all plays out. Thank you, Phil. Appreciate your time. This is a great show. Hope everybody enjoyed watching on YouTube. We appreciate all the interaction, all the comments. And David, you want to tell us one more time about Homefield? We've got the promo code there.
We do. Use the promo code PHIL15. That's Phil, our man Phil Steele, 15 for 15% off your order at homefieldapparel.com. They make quality, thoughtful apparel for 190 colleges and universities all across the country, including the Campbell Fighting Camels, who I'm repping today. Look at that snarling camel. He is intimidating. He is exactly how I feel. I'm so hungry right now, guys. But I'm also hungry for more Homefield gear. So go to homefieldapparel.com, get yourself some gear, and send me some money for food because I'm starving.
All right. That's the show. I said it wrong last week. It's 11 a.m. Eastern time is when we go live for this show every Thursday. And we'll be back next week for the Week 7 edition of the Phil Steele Show. Thanks for watching.